These are the sounds of war.
It has been a deadly weekend and week for U.S. forces in Iraq. All told, at least 31 Americans died this past week.
But there is another sound that can be just as powerful, one that can rally a nation or sway public opinion.
Some folks are born made to wave the flag, ooh, they're red, white, and blue. And when the band plays hail to the chief, ooh, they point the cannon at you, Lord.
Some may not realize the role music plays in shaping our thoughts about war. It was music like this that prompted many to have strong feelings about the war in Vietnam.
Oh, the times they are a-changing.
Music has often been used to rally troops and support. But, like Vietnam, we are in a war today where many believe we do not belong. In a time of international conflict, does music serve to heal a nation or further divide us? With a look at the music of war, I'm Dr. Terry Likes for Western's Public Radio. In each generation, through their music, politics, controversies, and current events were heard. Western Kentucky University music professor Mary Walensky says the effect of music produced a dramatic change in people's lives, dating back to revolutionary times.
There's the actual music that they used within the battle or prior to the battle. So those would be the trumpet calls and marches and the fife and drum. That's really battle music.
The war between the states was loaded with songs on both sides of the Mason-Dixon line. In writing about patriotic songs of the Civil War, author Kathy Fraser says none is more strongly identified with the Union than the Battle Hymn of the Republic. Throughout World Wars I and II, governments used popular music as an effective means for inspiring pride, patriotism, and moving citizens to action in order to gain manpower. What may be different in the last 50 years is the connection between music and popular culture. Dr. Carl Kell has taught communication and media courses at Western Kentucky University for 35 years. He says songs about war usually focus on the administration at the time of the conflict, or about the just or unjust nature of the war.
We've only had one instance in American history where an unknown, uncontrollable, out-of-touch attack on American culture and democracy, as in World War II and Pearl Harbor, drew the country into war. It became a just war.
And in that regard, Kell says music served as a rallying cry.
We're anxious for you over there when Johnny comes marching home. The war protest songs about World War II were very much below the radar, and in its place were proactive, positive messages, persuasive messages about why we're in the war and why it's a just war, fighting two sinister forces on two different continents.
WKU music professor Mary Walensky.
We've seen it in the 60s with the Vietnam War. We've seen it with World War II and the importance of swing music as almost like a patriotic American music that accompanied World War II.
As in many movements throughout history, music of the Vietnam era served as a cause for action. According to the website jwsrockgarden.com, upon hearing the news of Kent State, musician Neil Young sat down and wrote this song, and within 24 hours, Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young were recording Ohio.
Tin soldiers and Nixon coming, we're finally on our own. This summer I hear the drumming, for dead in Ohio.
Brian Locke is a music announcer and program director for the classic rock station WDNS-FM in Bowling Green, Kentucky.
When that song starts, you feel like you're there all over again. That's the weird thing about war songs.
Locke says the Doors' 5-1 is about how many American soldiers are killed as opposed to Vietnamese.
5-1, baby, 1 in 5. No one here gets out alive now.
Then from the Vietnamese perspective of, I'm going to pick up my axe and fight like a farmer. Those are words that evoke the emotion of war and the fear.
Come on, people now, smile on your brother, everybody get together, try to love one another right now.
In his role as the music contributor for the CBS Sunday morning program, here's MTV's Bill Flanagan.
Rock music became, for the counterculture, what the newspaper had been for the straight culture. It became the way that people talked to each other and sent the word out.
Dr. Marjorie Yambor has taught courses studying the process and effects of the media, as well as American popular culture. She is also the faculty general manager overseeing WKU's student radio station. Yambor says music is designed to invoke feeling, emotion, and passion for all elements of life.
And certainly everyone goes back to that period of time as really looking at pop culture that did something. It motivated some kind of change. It was an impetus for the recognition that a lot of things within American culture, and I think the world at large, needed to change. And music at that point was much more, as far as I'm concerned, a fabric for society at large.
Once again, from CBS Sunday Morning, music contributor Bill Flanagan.
At that time, all the best minds of the generation went into music. That's why the music lasts when most of the other things from the culture at that time are forgotten.
California dreaming.
There's something happening here, but what it is ain't exactly clear.
Today, with the number of radio stations, variety of music formats, and ways to download music, our media habits have changed, according to Dr. Marjorie Yambor.
People are very much wrapped up with their own realities and creating their own stories and their own worlds that are often very detached from what's going on in a larger political and a larger global sense. So I think music still has the potential, but it definitely is not really making the kind of mark that it did in the 60s because our entire media environment has changed.
Dr. Carl Kell says the music of today became more angry after we learned there were no weapons of mass destruction. Many were also angry when the Dixie Chicks spoke out against President Bush and our war efforts.
It's too late to make it right. I probably wouldn't if I could, 'cause I'm mad as hell, can't bring myself to do what it is you think I should.
Many Americans believe the Dixie Chicks should not criticize the commander-in-chief while the country was at war. It angered some country music fans and was financially damaging for the trio. Shortly after, singer Natalie Maines attempted to clarify matters by saying she felt the president is, in her words, ignoring the opinions of many in the U.S. and alienating the rest of the world. Despite this uproar, Dr. Carl Kell says most of today's music is below the national radar.
It's strictly confined to the subcultures that find American imperialism on the march as being totally out of touch with reality. So we're dealing with music in 2007 that no one knows about. Contrasted with 1946, 47, and during the years of the war, it was as much a tune on everyone's lips as any song we could think of today that has been a commercial success.
Radio station program director Brian Locke says there are bands today, like Pearl Jam and others, that are proving that music is still the backdrop to our lives.
Pearl Jam is one of those bands that has taken up the Neil Young flannel flag and said, hey, you know, as long as wars are being fought, we are going to try to show both sides of the story.
Communication professor Carl Kell says despite your views about war, one can find music to support your rationale.
From 9/11 to 07, where that argument and music come together, justifying the expense of human life that is lost, the expense of the budget necessary to sustain the troops. So I think we're hard-pressed in our culture to find music that sustains and supports the troops while they're there. We more often find music that is haunting melodies about the awful rationales used to go there and the cost of having to be there, and those who don't come home, which is the most horrendous cost of all.
Locke says music is powerful in making us think about why we are at war.
The fife and corps going on the battlefield of the Revolutionary War to right now the iPods on the strapped on the head of a soldier in northern Iraq while he's in a turret somewhere in a tank. Music is still there.
For Western's Public Radio, I'm Dr. Terry Likes.
Absolutely.